This video is an AI-generated analytical evaluation of Volodymyr Zelenskyy, President of Ukraine. The assessment you are about to hear is based on publicly available statistical data from international polling organizations, Ukrainian sociological institutes, global media reports, and large-scale social media sentiment observations. The goal of this narration is not to praise or condemn, but to explain how measurable public opinion has changed over time, and how an artificial intelligence system evaluates leadership using data rather than emotion or ideology. Volodymyr Zelenskyy became president of Ukraine in 2019 after winning one of the most decisive elections in the country's modern history. More than 70% of voters supported him in the second round. At the time, he was viewed as a political outsider, a former comedian and actor who promised to fight corruption, reduce the influence of oligarchs, and modernize the state. His early approval ratings reflected public hope rather than proven performance, which is common for newly elected leaders. The defining moment of Zelenskyy's presidency occurred in February 2022, when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. From that moment forward, his role transformed from reformist president to wartime leader. According to multiple independent surveys conducted during the first months of the invasion, public trust in Zelenskyy rose dramatically. Some polls recorded trust levels approaching or exceeding 90%. This phenomenon is known in political science as a rally around the flag effect, where citizens unify behind leadership during an external existential threat. From an AI evaluation perspective, such spikes are not interpreted as permanent approval, but as context-driven reactions. Wartime approval surges occur across different countries and political systems. What matters more from long-term evaluation is how trust evolves after the initial shock period. As the war continued through 2022, 2023, and into 2024, polling data began to show a gradual normalization of public opinion. Trust in Zelenskyy declined from its wartime peak, but remained significantly higher than pre-war levels. Depending on polling organization, methodology, and timing, surveys placed trust and approval between the mid-50s and low 70s in percentage terms. From an AI standpoint, this range is considered high for a democratic leader governing during prolonged war conditions. It is important to understand why different polls show different numbers. Polling results are influenced by question wording, sample size, geographic coverage, and whether respondents are asked about trust, approval, or voting intention. Trust measures emotional confidence in leadership. Approval measures satisfaction with performance. Voting intention measures hypothetical electoral behavior. These are not identical metrics, and an honest AI evaluation treats them separately rather than combining them into a single number. Social media data adds another layer of complexity. Platforms such as X, Reddit, YouTube, Telegram, and Facebook show polarized discourse around Zelenskyy. Pro-government narratives, strong criticism, war fatigue, praise for international advocacy, and frustration with domestic issues all coexist. AI sentiment analysis shows that negative content tends to be louder and more repetitive, while positive sentiment is more dispersed. This does not mean negative sentiment dominates the population. It reflects how online engagement algorithms amplify conflict and controversy. AI systems do not treat social media as a replacement for polling. Instead, social media is used to identify themes, emotional tone, and narrative frequency. For example, recurring criticisms focus on mobilization policies, economic pressure, corruption concerns, and absence of elections during martial law. Recurring praise focuses on international advocacy, resistance leadership, and communication skills. Both sets of narratives are recorded without preference. A key part of honest AI evaluation is addressing misinformation. At various points, claims circulated online that Zelensky's approval had collapsed to extremely low levels, sometimes cited as single-digit percentages. Independent verification shows that such figures were not supported by credible polling organizations. No reputable nationwide survey measured approval anywhere near those levels during the period in question. AI systems trained to evaluate credibility weigh source reliability, historical accuracy, and cross-verification across institutions. Another aspect often overlooked is comparative context. AI evaluation does not ask whether Zelensky is universally loved, but how his approval compares to other leaders in similar conditions. When compared to democratic leaders governing during prolonged military conflict, economic strain, and population displacement, Zelensky's sustained majority trust is statistically notable. This does not make it morally superior or inferior, but it is relevant data. The AI also evaluates leadership communication. Zelensky's daily addresses, international speeches, and direct messaging style are analyzed for consistency, emotional tone, and clarity. His communication style is direct, repetitive, and symbolic, which is effective in crisis conditions. This effectiveness is reflected in international approval metrics, where surveys in allied countries often show favorable views of his leadership, even when domestic opinions fluctuate. However, honest evaluation also includes limitations. Polls conducted during wartime face constraints. Some regions are inaccessible. Some citizens are displaced abroad. Some respondents may self-censor due to fear or social pressure. AI confidency intervals are assigned to account for these uncertainties, rather than treating polling numbers as absolute truth. From a data-driven perspective, the most accurate conclusion is that Zelensky remains a majority-trusted leader within Ukraine, though not universally supported. His approval is dynamic rather than static. It rises after major diplomatic successes or military defense events, and declines during periods of mobilization strain or economic difficulty. This pattern aligns with leadership performance under stress rather than ideological loyalty. The AI does not evaluate intentions, morality, or heroism. It evaluates outcomes, public response, and measurable trends. Based on available data, Zelensky's leadership is perceived by a significant portion of the Ukrainian population as legitimate and necessary under wartime conditions, while also facing increasing scrutiny as the conflict prolongs. An important distinction in this evaluation is the difference between criticism and rejection. Data shows growing criticism, but not widespread rejection. Many respondents who express dissatisfaction with certain policies still report trust in Zelensky as commander-in-chief. This nuance is often lost in simplified narratives, but is critical for honest analysis. Another factor considered by AI is institutional trust. Surveys show that trust in the presidency often exceeds trust in parliament or political parties. This suggests that Zelensky's personal leadership brand remains stronger than the broader political system. Whether this is sustainable long-term is uncertain and not predicted here. AI evaluation also avoids forecasting election outcomes unless sufficient data exists. Since elections are postponed under martial law, hypothetical scenarios remain speculative. Responsible AI analysis avoids definitive claims about future voting behavior in the absence of legal and procedural clarity.
In summary, based on publicly available polling data, longitudinal trends, and cross-platform sentiment analysis, Volodymyr Zelenskyy is evaluated as a leader with sustained majority trust during an unprecedented national crisis. His approval is lower than its wartime peak, higher than pre-war norms, and variable depending on circumstances. Claims of extreme collapse are not supported by credible evidence. Claims of universal support are also inaccurate. This evaluation was generated by AI without political alignment. It relies on statistics, methodological comparison, and consistency checks rather than emotional framing. The purpose is not persuasion, but transparency. Data does not produce simple heroes or villains. It produces ranges, probabilities, and context. If viewers disagree with this evaluation, the appropriate response is to examine sources, compare methodologies, and question assumptions.